Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for our new release, Lockup 5.4. And today we have the title Cost Transparent Route Planning and Enhanced Carbon Footprint Visibility. So we also hopefully brought you today some really cool, new, interesting features. And like always, I want to start with a quick agenda that I want to show you today. Overall, I have 6 points today that I wanted to talk about. The first one, like mentioned already in the title, we made an enhancement in our route optimization, especially in the Milkrun Plus optimization, that we can allocate now the costs. So what we had already before, we optimize based on the cost. So for example, the vehicle, you had already a cost indicator, how much it costs you this vehicle for the whole round trip. But what was missing is the cost allocation to each single stop. And this is what we integrated now in the calculation. I will show you later then in detail how this cost allocation is actually calculated. Besides this enhancement, we have 2 topics in the CO2 calculation. We have one new calculation type. We call them inland waterways. So if you want to calculate the CO2 emission that is needed by a barge that is going on a river transport, that's why it's called inland waterways. Now you can also calculate here the CO2 emission based on the CLEC framework. On the existing CO2 calculation in the road mode, we did based on your feedback and enhancement that you can easier calculate multiple truck types in one go. So this is a small but a really helpful enhancement there. This one I want to show you. And then a bigger change we did in the network design simulator, where we will spend some time to explain you the changes. So in a couple of words, what we did there, the whole time was the position of the sender that is decided in the optimization run was depending on the customer locations. And now we are also recognizing the inbound stream, right? So there we did some adjustments. You can also influence this importance of the inbound and outbound with a certain factor. And this is what we changed here. Additionally, I want to show you one small new feature in our workspace management. So we enabled in this release the bulk deletion. And I can also give you an update what we are currently working on and which other changes you will see then maybe in the next release regarding the workspace management topics. And in the end, I just want to highlight some information how you can align a meeting with our customer success team if you have some individual questions. So like always, please feel also free to ask in this round some questions. You have the possibility to use our Q&A section, and my colleagues in the background try to answer these questions directly. If there are some interesting topics that should be relevant for the whole group, then I will try to pick it up directly in the demo itself. Yes, and then I think we can start. So let's start first with this Milkrun Plus optimization and this new cost allocation. Let me quickly switch to the Excel. And the first thing what I want to do is actually just do a regular Milkrun Optimization Plus run with a new template. And then I can quickly explain what is actually new, what is existing. So what in the input area, there nothing really changed. So just regarding the cost, a quick summary, you can model here in the vehicle table. You have the possibility to model the cost for a vehicle. You have, for example, fixed cost per vehicle. If the vehicle is used, then you have cost per hour, cost per kilometer, cost per stop. And this is then influencing what is the result regarding the cost when you calculate a route. So if I made a calculation here already in the background, if I export now the existing template to a new sheet, we have multiple output tables. The main one is the route overview. Here we saw already, this is also nothing new. Here in column C, you can see that you have here the costs for this vehicle, for this route, right? And for example, this route here has 7 stops. And then you have a total cost of 363, let's say euro, right? The currency depends what you fill in the input field. If we take a look at the route details, then we have now what is actually new, this additional cost column. And here we are distribute again this 363. As you can see here, it's 362.99 because of some rounding, is now distributed on each single stop. And this cost allocation, just to mention it in front, there are multiple ways how you can calculate this. We chose one way that is actually quite popular, and this one I want to explain you in detail. How you can influence this cost calculation before I explain you in detail how you can do it. You can, here on the right side in the calculation, you have a new parameter, cost allocation by, right? And in here you can select now, do you want to allocate the cost depending on the weight, on the volume, on the pallets, or all three in a combination. And now I will explain you how this cost calculation works. So obviously, if you, for example, using your calculation run only pallets, then it also totally makes sense to distribute the cost only by the pallets itself. But if you really choose all three parameters at once, then you can also distribute it by all of them at once. So this is the idea, and this is what new. So in general here, this parameter is new. And then that you have now in the output, in the cost, so in the route details, this additional column. Let's quickly take a look how this cost calculation is done. Therefore, I prepared an additional sample template. What I changed to the generate template itself is the following, that I just choose one vehicle type. I have 20 vehicles available. And I also removed for now the brakes to make the example easier, the cost calculation. And then I made one calculation run. And in this calculation run, in total, I have 5 different routes. And I want to explain you how are the costs of the route number 1 with 385 euro, how they are distributed on the different stops. So in total, we have here 6 stops. What I did here on the right side, I filled that on this route 1. And here you can see we start at the depot in Zurich, then we drive to this 6 different stops. And in the end, we are going back to the depot. And here you can see when I highlight here the costs that are calculated, it is again the 385. And now I try to quickly explain you how this cost allocation is done. Here I draw a small picture, or better, like our colleague Ivan drew us a small picture who developed this one. In general, we are going in this route to 6 different stops to deliver there in total 60 pallets. And the way how we are driving is the black line here, right? We are going from to a stop now to this stop, then to the next stop, and so on, right? But that the cost distribution is kind of fair. Each stop should carry more costs when, first of all, it's further away from the depot itself. Plus, what also should influence the cost distribution, how much pallets are actually delivered to this stop, right? So again, I'm just distributing it here by the pallets. And how do we calculate this? In the first step, we calculate the distance from the depot to each single stop. Here it's important to make a difference. Here on top, we have here also a distance, but careful. This distance that we display here is, for example, here from the depot at Zurich to the first stop at store 6 are 8.36 kilometers, right? This is this distance of this line. The next distance that we see here is the distance from this stop to this stop. So this part of the black line. What we need to have is actually the distance from the depot itself to the stop, right? So this means based on this distance column, you cannot directly calculate the cost. What we do in the background for you, we use our distance matrix. And I can also quickly show you how you could do this manually. If you, for example, decide to have a different formula to distribute the cost, we have here this distance matrix app. And in the distance matrix app, the input, if you want to recalculate, is just you fill in the depot itself and all the stops that are actually visited. And the result is, for example, this distance matrix. And what it returns us from the depot in Zurich to each of the stops, here you have then directly the distance. So the distance, what is relevant for us, is exactly this first row here. Because you read the matrix also from left to the right, from depot in Zurich to depot in Zurich is 0. That to the store 1, it's 32.54, right? This column here is just the distance in the other way around. From store 1 back to the depot in Zurich, it can be a slightly different distance, as you can see here. The two differences, because on the way back, you cannot drive exactly the same route than on the way there. So that's just that you know why is there a difference in this matrix. Then let's go back to our calculation itself. Now, I just copied over here this matrix for you that you have it here. The first topic, what we did, we have here our 6 stops that we need to cover. This is now the distance from the depot to each of the steps. And then I added here how many pallets get delivered on this stop. This is the first 2 topics that we needed first. Then the next topic is now we just multiply the distance with the number of pallets. Then we have actually here this column here. And then we want to split actually the costs, this 383, depending on this ratio here, on this distance pallets ratio. Therefore, I just calculate here the percentage. The percentage, just to highlight the formula, is quite simple. I just divide the distance multiplied by pallets of each single stop, divided by the total here. Then I get down to this column. And then the last step, what you need to do is you need to multiply the total costs with this percentage, and then you get actually here the allocated costs. So for example, if we take here a look at this stop, for example, this store 7, it has costs of 43 euro. And when we take a look here on top, store 7, you also have here the 43 euro. So here I just did a rounding additionally, but here we calculated it with 2 digits in the background. So this is actually how this cost calculation is done. And important, for example, if we do now, I will not do the same calculation again, but I just want to explain, if I would select here now weight, then the only difference would be I still calculate the same distances. Instead of the pallets, I use the weight. Then I multiply the distances with the weight and calculate the percentage and have then the cost distributed according to the weight. If I would select all 3 property types, weight, volume, and pallets, then I would do the same calculation I have here for pallets, weight, and for the volume. And before I distribute it, I calculate then an average above these 3 percentages. This is actually then used to distribute the cost. In this way, we make sure that, for example, if you have really high weights because you use kilogram compared to pallets, for example, you have 3 pallets, what would result in 1,200 kilograms, then still the ratio is actually the same, right? The pallets have the same influence than like the weight, even if the weight number is much bigger. So this is actually how this cost calculation is done. Overall, well, like I mentioned already before, this is one way to calculate the cost distribution. For sure, you have the possibility to do your own calculations, like you had to do it the whole time. But now we integrated this, that you have already a good ratio how to allocate actually the cost on a single stop. Okay. Are there maybe any questions regarding this this feature in the round that we should take up? If not, then oh. Okay, perfect. Then otherwise, if there are any questions come up, feel free to just write in the Q&A section, and then we can continue now with the next topic regarding our CO2 calculation, the enhancements. Okay, so what is new in the CO2 calculator? When we go here, CO2 emissions, The first thing what I wanted to show under latitude longitude, we have a new template called Inland Waterway. I just generated here the template, and let me run directly an additional calculation in the background. Let's quickly explain the input. So the input is really similar like you have it on sea or air. So what we have here, we talk about some shipments. If you want to do a shipment on an inland waterway, you can fill in the from latitude and the from latitude and longitude and the to latitude and longitude. What we do in the background, as you can see, you don't need to fill in the harbor itself that is actually used. What we do a search and take a look in a certain radius, what is the closest harbor to this zip code. And this is actually then our starting location and our end location. Then you can define if it's refrigerated or not. You have an additional optional column, a distance. This means if you, for example, know from your provider the distance that was actually traveled on the waterway itself, you can use this distance. If you don't have it, we use the distance that we are calculating depending on our data in the background. And then you can assign the weight. Let me quickly just open the result on the map, because then it's easier to explain what we are actually doing here. 1 second. Hide the multiple shipments and take a look at this red shipment here. So now we are coming here close to from Rotterdam, from an inland port, and go down here the Rhine, down to Basel. If we zoom, for example, now in, if I would have provided a zip code somewhere in the middle of Basel, he would still find the next port that is close by, and would start a calculation from here, from the next available port in the waterways. So then the calculation is done, and as you can see, we also have here actually the exact polyline, what the vessel is actually taking to transport the goods. Depending on this polyline, we are calculating the distance. So this means if we go back to the tool and export all the results to the new sheet, then you can see the first thing what we need to do is to calculate the distance, because the distance was not provided. If you would provide the distance here already, then we would always use your provided distance, because there can be a difference in the distances. Whenever you provide a distance, we use your distance. This is the same approach like in the other topics too. And then, like always, we calculate then the CO2 emission based on the certain factors. So behind this whole topic is this CLEC framework, like in the other calculation methods too. What we have additionally is also here this refrigerant factor. This means if you can influence this, this would add now 12% on top to a non-refrigerated shipment. So this is how this is actually calculated here. And like always, you have the possibility, this ship type, you can select which kind of barge or you are actually using here. And then you can select the one, and depending on this barge that you select, we use the factor that is actually provided also and published in the CLEC framework. So this is now also possible. There's maybe one additional point what I want to mention, because there are inland waterways. Currently, we support the following inland waterways. When you go to the Help Center, you can take a look. Here's a new tile, Inland Waterways. Click here to find out which ports are supported. And here are now the ports that we are currently supporting, mainly at the moment with a focus in Europe. If you need some additional ports that we should support, please contact us on support. Then we can take a look if we can add this to this distance calculations to our database in the background. Okay. This would be one topic. If there are not any questions, then I would directly continue with the other CO2 emission enhancement. So guys, feel free just to interrupt me, then I don't need to ask regarding the questions. Here, regarding the CO2 calculations, let's go to the address mode and let's generate a template here on the road. So we have, this is the existing one. What is new here, actually, we have one additional column. This is the vehicle type. It's an optional column. If you leave it empty, it will behave like it always did the whole time. But there was a wish from multiple customers that it would be nice to calculate different truck types in one go. How it worked at the moment, if you want to calculate CO2 emission for this truck, for this truck, or if you want to use actually the truck of the US, for example, you always needed to do two different runs, because whenever you selected here type, this was applied for all the shipments in this calculation. Now you have the following possibility. I also therefore prepared actually an input table. Give me 1 second. This is not a correct one. Here, CO2 emission road. And how I did this, let's quickly select it. So what I did here, I just took segments. You can fill in here now the vehicle type directly in this column. Which vehicle type you need to fill in is the exact vehicle type that you can just select it from here and copy and paste it here in this column. So this means even if I on purpose calculated here the exact same shipments, always from Bad Hersfeld in Germany to Hamburg, with the same distances, there are different results in the CO2 calculation because we use a different vehicle type. This you can do now in one go. And then you see actually here in the end that the CO2 emission here is quite different, right? So just make sure that you always select the correct type that is actually valid for your calculation, because it can really make a huge difference, these factors. There is one additional thing what we had already before in, but I think it's good to highlight it. If you do, let's do quickly a calculation. And when the calculation is done, you have here in the output table, you have here actually a possibility to select here certain columns. And here you can, by default, this is deselected. You can say calculation insights. Okay, let's quickly export the calculation insights here. Here you can actually directly see then the formula that is actually used for this calculation. I also exported here already on top, and I enhance it for you. So here you can really see how the CO2 calculation is exactly calculated, what is influencing it, and also which factors are used. Because we had multiple times the question in the customer success teams, how can we actually understand how the CO2 calculation is done and which effect has the different factors, for example. If enable this feature, you can directly see the formula that is actually used for the calculation. So this can be quite helpful if you really want to understand in detail how the calculation is done and why, for example, the CO2 emission is so high or so low. So this can be quite helpful. So overall, it's just a small enhancement. You have now the possibility in the road mode to directly fill the type. There's just one more thing what I forgot to highlight. The other factors here, if you are used the fuel type diesel, this is then still taken over by this selection here. So the only thing that we currently support to adjust this in one go is actually the vehicle type. But this is also, to be honest, the most common use case that you want to change regarding the other factors. Okay, perfect. This is actually what I wanted to explain you regarding the CO2 emissions calculations. Do we at the moment have any questions that we should address to the bigger round? Otherwise, I will continue with quite a big change in our network design simulator. Therefore, as you guys know, the network design simulator is here on the platform. If you have here a project, you can create, for example, a new project name, and then it creates you here this project type and you can run it. I prepared to explain you the change, what we did already two specific cases. One case, it's to be honest, it's like an extreme case to really show you the different kind in the calculation, right? Let me quickly show you in the geocoding just the network structure. So it's a really simple network structure that I'm actually using here. Let's just give it a second to load real quick the map. 1 second. Yeah, there it comes. So we have in this extreme case just one customer and 5 different suppliers. Okay. And why do we do such a strange network? To really explain you the difference in the calculation. So we have one customer, 5 different suppliers. If we would calculate now in the past, the network design simulator and tell him, okay, create us as a new warehouse. So let's just create one level of warehouses between our suppliers and our customers. Then he would place the warehouse directly on top of this one customer. The reason was for this that only the customers were actually influencing the location of the warehouses. But the suppliers, especially in this extreme case, has also quite an influence. Where should I place the warehouse? And this is actually what we changed now, right? So this was actually the past. If we take now a look what actually changed in the input data. So we have one additional table. It's called the outbound inbound factor. In this model, we on purpose made 4 different scenarios and have now one scenario that we actually manipulated to have the same behavior like it was in the past. Here you can define in this table what is the factor, how important are the customers for the optimization. We did here, the customers are 1 million times more important than the suppliers. This is obviously not a real case. This is just for the demonstration because this is the same topic like the calculation was in the past. If we go now, for example, to our scenario results here, we will actually see that we place now the newly calculated warehouse directly on top of the customer. 1 second, I'm not sure. Looks like this sharing topic is influencing the rendering from the map. So sorry for this one. Here you can see that the hub that we created is directly on top of the customers because it's the same location. You can I put the customers or the recipient location on top. You can see we place it directly on top of the customers. In the other scenario that we calculated, we did actually weight the customer weight 5 times higher than the inbound weight. This means we should expect now a scenario where we still move actually the sender towards closer to the customer, but not fully to the customer anymore. Just 1 second, let me, okay. So now, as you can see here, 5 different customers. We have one additional sender calculated. It's still really close to the customer because the weight is 5 times more important on the customers than here. Let's maybe make one additional scenario. And then I can show you the other way around, the more common case, where we actually have then multiple customers and only maybe a couple of suppliers or one supplier, how the network is influenced then. But this one I choose on purpose because this was also reported by you that there is a problem if you have a case with multiple suppliers and only a few customers. 1 second to load the map. While we are waiting here, let me quickly, yeah, there it is. So here, for example, the weight of the suppliers is now higher. So it's 0.5. This means the suppliers are more important than the customer itself. That's why the sender is pulled towards the supplier. Now I prepared actually here an additional scenario. Here, let's go also to the geocoding. And let's take a look what here the scenario is. Here I actually have two different customer groups. So 1 second, I think I need to open the project again. Okay, so one topic, before I show you the other way around regarding the modeling, I hope this is loading in a second. One additional topic, what I wanted to show you today is the bulk deletion in the workspaces. Especially when you create multiple scenarios, it is quite easily, you have the possibility that you have really many topics in one workspace, right? Here, for example, I just did 3 center of gravity scenario calculations, and I have already 15 objects in this workspace. We are currently heavily working on some restructuring of this workspace functionalities, what we have. What we released already in this release is that you have the possibility to select, for example, you have now here this multi-selection on top. You can either have here on top to select everything in a workspace, or you can just select, for example, multiple folders. Now, what was already before like this, if you deleted a folder, you delete already the whole content. But if you have, for example, 80 different scenarios in a workspace, it's still quite time consuming to delete this 80 different topics if you don't just want to delete the total workspace. And now you just have the possibility to do here, for example, the bulk deletion. If you do this, then it will just delete the selected topics. And therefore, yeah, you don't have to do this manually. This is one topic, and just what I wanted to mention, we are currently working on a couple new features. That is just, we will have the possibility to create subfolders. Hopefully this will be released in the next release, that you have subfolders. And then you also have the possibility, you can have as many subfolders as you want, like you are used to it from other explorers. And you also have the possibility to move the items between the subfolders easily to manage bigger projects in a certain subfolder structure. So this one we are working on, this was not fully done yet. That's why we just released for now the bulk deletion itself. Yes, regarding this topic, what I wanted to show you here. So overall, the inbound outbound factors, this was all shown already. The influencing point, I just can currently not load one additional scenarios. I just wanted to mention in addition that you also have the possibility to model it the other way around. If you, for example, have multiple customers and so on, then you can also position the result evenly accordingly to your input. The only thing what you need to make sure, if you create now the additional new scenarios, that you fill this inbound outbound factor table in the beginning. This is this new additional table what I also showed, and this is relevant for this configuration. Okay, perfect. So sorry for the problem with my connection that I had to interrupt this network design simulator enhancement. Are there maybe any questions that we can currently address? So if not, then there is only one last topic what I wanted to highlight. Let me quick go into presentation mode. If you have, for example, certain questions, I know many of our customers doing this already, but I'm not sure if everyone is aware of it. If you have a Pro account from us, you have also the possibility to contact our customer success team. Here I just have a small screenshot of our team. Most of you, most likely, you know Jelena, most likely also Bojan. Milena also joined our team, and Servanan also helped already quite a lot. So feel free to contact us on support@lockup.com. Obviously, you can also use the existing chatbot like you're used to. And then we can also set up with you an additional call when you have, for example, certain question, how you should want to model a certain case or how to use the application correctly in the correct way. So whenever you have there any problems, it doesn't only have to be a technical issue. It can also be a question, okay, how can I model this, for example, and feel free to contact us. Then our expert will align a call with you and help you to guide you maybe in a short call in the right direction. Okay, so this is actually what I wanted to share. So looking forward to our next release regarding many additional features that are coming up. So just a heads up. So next year in February, the Lockup 6.0 will be quite a big release with many topics already for Lockup 6.0 that we have already developed. We have already some customers also testing some new functionality. So this means in February next year, there comes a big release. And also in the end of the year, we have an additional release where we will also have some additional enhancements. But a big change will definitely come in February next year. Okay, then thank you very much for your attention. If there are no questions, otherwise feel free to contact us, like mentioned here, under support, and then have a great day, and thank you for your time. Bye.